Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Indian Business Podcast.
Thank you.
Sir, today I'm very excited to talk to you because I'm sick and tired of politicians' answers. So I thought I'll come and talk to you and understand where exactly are we heading. Because, sir, to be honest, as a citizen, it's quite confusing. On one side, we are being celebrated as the fourth largest economy,
Right.
$4 trillion economy. On the other side, unemployment is at an all-time high.
Yes.
On one side, we are aiming for Viksit Bharat and bullet trains, whereas on the other side, 800 million Indians are still surviving on subsidized food. So, as an economy, where exactly are we heading, sir?
If you say the organized sector is doing well, the unorganized sector where 94% are employed, that is the part that is not doing well. In fact, it's parts of it are declining. So this 94% workforce is facing problem. And because that is where the bulk of the employment is, if it is facing problem, then you have unemployment, right? But what happens is the GDP data does not have a proper way of taking into account the unorganized sector because it's huge. So you don't get data. Government gives out data every quarter. So what data comes out is very little. Even for the business sector, only the corporate sector, the 300-400 companies that have declared their balance sheet, only their data is taken. So they are representing these 300-400 companies are representing everybody.
Okay.
Whereas, there are about 70 million micro units. There are about 500,000 small and medium units, and bulk of them are not in the stock market. There are only about 5,000-6,000 large units, and of them the actively traded maybe 1,500. So it's this 1,500 that is representing the 6,000-7,000 big units, the 500,000, the medium and the small units, and 70 million micro units. So that is not proper because there is a differential between them. And that is that the organized sector is growing, but the unorganized sector is not growing.
Okay.
If the unorganized sector was also growing at 6.5-7%, there would be a lot of employment generation. But because it's declining, therefore the employment problem is there. Okay.
So, when we say that we are the fastest growing economy and we're growing at 6%, 7%, that is only being calculated taking into account the organized sector,
That's right.
which is only 6% of the country.
Which is workforce is 6%, but its output is 55%.
Okay.
Okay. So the output being 55%, you can say it's representing 55% of the output, right? But the remaining 45%, agriculture is another 14-15%. That gets some data. The remaining 30%, which is the non-agriculture, unorganized sector, that data is not there. So this is representing the whole, which is not proper. So it won't represent your employment situation. Like for instance, in agriculture, also there's a lot of mechanization. Earlier, you used to do cultivation using hull and bale. Now you use tractors. Earlier, you used to cut the crop by hand. Now you have these harvester combines. So what people would take many days to harvest, a harvester combine will come and do it in one day, right? Similarly, threshers, but threshing done by machines, potato digging done by machines, and so on and so forth. So even agriculture is not generating jobs because of the mechanization that's taking place in the economy. And the organized sector is highly automated and mechanized. So there, less and less of employment is being generated. And you can see this in, say, the banking sector. In the banking sector in 1990, to do any work on the thing, you had to go to the bank branch to withdraw cash, to get the passbook filled, to get the checkbook and so on. Now you can do everything on this mobile phone. You don't need to go to the bank branch. So even though banks' work has expanded by 1,000-fold in the last 30 years, 35 years, but the workforce has become half. Similarly, you take the trade sector. In the trade sector, your e-commerce is growing by 25-30%. But the neighborhood stores are declining because people are going less and less to that. And people are ordering more and more on the e-commerce or at best going to the mall and buying from there. So this is the organized sector is growing, the unorganized sector is declining. And this is the case with many other sectors, whether it be the pressure cooker industry, whether it be the FMCG, whether it be the leather goods industry, luggage industry, and so on. The data seems to suggest that the unorganized sector is declining. So you're representing the declining sector by a rising sector.
Got it.
So therefore your GDP shows a rise, but actually GDP is not rising by so much. So my argument is that on an average in the last time since demonetization, the economy is growing only in 1.5%, 2%, 2.5%. It's not going more than that. So therefore, we are not yet a $3.8 trillion economy. We're still only $2.5 trillion.
What?
Yeah.
2.5 trillion?
Because you see, the unorganized sector is declining. Only the organized sector is rising. So therefore, the rate of growth instead of being 7% is more like 2%.
Yeah.
And especially during demonetization, you can see how wrong our data was. The demonetization showed that November, December, January, February, March, 5 months, the economy had come to a standstill. And even agriculture had declined. The farmers could not bring their produce to the market. Vegetables were rotting in the field, flowers were rotting in the field, and so on. So in my demonetization book, I've given the data that in the Azadpur Mandi in Delhi, which is the biggest mandi if North India, less than half the produce was coming. The rest was in the fields or rotting, and so on. And you had pictures of people throwing milk on the roads. You have pictures of tomato being thrown on the roads and Shimla mirch being thrown on the roads, etc., because it was going for 1 rupee a kilo. So even agriculture had declined, but the government says agriculture did very well. Similarly, I went in the month of March to Gwalior, and I went to the local market there, and the market had not opened till 12 o'clock. And they were playing cards, the shopkeeper. So I said, why have you not opened? They said, there are no customers coming. We went to the labor chalk at 1 o'clock, and at the labor chalk, it was full. So I said, usually you people leave if you don't get work by 9:30 or so. They said, we have not been getting any work, so we are willing to stay and get even 1/4 of day or half day work. So they were standing there. So in other words, the economy was down for 5 months. There was negative growth. And yet the government's data shows the maximum rate of growth for that decade was 8% in the demonetization year.
Yeah.
Whereas it was negative growth. Because 5 months there was negative. Only for 7 months there was positive. And this negative was very large. You even saw luxury car sales decline.
Yeah.
You saw a demand for storage increase because factories were not able to sell their produce. And the unorganized sector did not have money to pay wages, did not have money to buy raw material, and therefore they had shut down. So it was clear evidence that the economy was negative, but the official data was showing it as 8% rate of growth. So you can tell how much error there is.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I've been pointing out is that what we do is we project from the previous year to the next year using high frequency data.
What is that, sir?
High frequency data means that which comes every month, the data. So that's called high frequency. So low frequency will mean that it will come only sometimes. High frequency means it comes very regularly. So like railway ticket sale, air sale, travel, freight loading, and things like that, which is, telephone connections and things like that. Now, if you look at the latest data for Q1 of this year, you find that they say that we are using the high frequency data to project. Then you go to the table for high frequency data. There you find that out of 22 items, only 6 had any positive growth. Remaining 16 had negative. Now, with 16 being negative, how can the rate of growth be 7.8%? By projecting with using high frequency data. So therefore, there is a problem. Either you say that, no, we have got some other data also, which we are using. It's not this only high frequency data. But in the write-up, you say we are using the high frequency data in Annexure B. And Annexure B shows that actually 6 out of 22 are growing, 16 are declining. So how can it be that the rate of growth has gone up? So just to complete, so demonetization damaged the unorganized sector. And next year you implemented the faulty GST. That again damaged the unorganized sector. So even though you've kept the unorganized sector out of GST, so if you have a turnover of 50 lakh and below, then you don't come under GST. If you're providing services worth 40 lakhs and less, then you don't come under it. If you are having a turnover up to 1.5 crore, then you come under the composition scheme, which is a very simplified scheme. So you largely kept the unorganized sector out of the GST. And yet GST has damaged this sector because it has benefited the organized sector at the expense of the unorganized sector. So therefore that came as the second shock to the unorganized sector. The third shock came next year when the NBFC crisis, the non-banking finance companies crisis, because they provide loans, etc., to the small and the unorganized sector. So that crisis came. So 3 shocks came one after the other. And then in 2020, 21, you had the pandemic. And again, the lockdown, it impacted the unorganized sector very badly. From the cities, people migrated to the rural areas, production came down and so on. So 4 shocks. So this idea that we can project from previous year to the next year, but the next year is a shock year. So how can you project from the previous year? That data doesn't apply. And then the next shock came. Then the next shock came. So the data goes wrong because you're projecting the wrong data to the year of the shock, and then from the year of the shock to the next year. So you're always overestimating. So that is where the problem is, because if the rate of growth is healthy this year, it doesn't mean in the demonetization year it was healthy. So you cannot project from this to, and that's why, because you're projecting from the wrong data, therefore you got an 8% rate of growth during demonetization, whereas actually you should be negative. And then from that 8% you're projecting next year to the GST year, when again it will show a higher rate of growth. Even though because of the GST damage, the unorganized sector declined, the rate of growth fell. And then you again project it to the NBFC. So the whole chain becomes, that's why I keep saying we are growing at only 1.5 or 2%. We are not growing at 6-7% that the government claims. So that is the reason why, what you pointed out, this contradiction, that we have large number of billionaires, but large number of poor. Simultaneously, you have 7% or 6.5% growth, and you have high unemployment. And you see, the unemployment is also not always visible. We did a report in 2022 October, we released 3 years back, which showed that there are 4 kinds of unemployment. One is you're looking for work and not finding work. So that's called unemployment. Second is because you're poor, you have to do something. So you will sit in the market, you drive a rickshaw, you do head load work, you pull a cart, you sell some chana at the bus stand, you'll have a push cart and sell some chai, But here the work is very little. So you'll be in the market for 12 hours and you'll get 2 hours or 3 hours of work. So you're underemployed. Then the third is what is called the disguised unemployed. That means at a shop, there are 2 or 3 people, whereas only 1 is needed. So this other 2 are not giving the productivity, but the family members are sitting there, or the family members are sitting in the field, and because they're sitting there, you count them as employed, whereas actually they're not contributing to the GDP. So this is called disguised unemployed. And the fourth category is you are so desperate that you've stopped looking for work. And there women come in large numbers. Women, what's called the labor force participation rate, that means in the age group of 15 to 60, they should be working, but they're not getting work, so they've given up looking for work. Or the youth between the age group of 15 to 29, they are not finding work appropriate to their degree. So they've stopped looking for work. They're taking an exam 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. They're wasting their time on watching the mobile phone all the time. They're getting frustrated and so on. Or they're into drugs and drinking, as some reports seem to suggest. And because they don't have money, they're snatching money at home. So violence has entered the home. So there are these 4 different kinds of unemployment. What the government data gives is only one kind of unemployment. It doesn't look at all these 3. So therefore, we showed that about 32 crore, 320 million Indians have some proper work. But 280 million Indians don't have proper work. So this 320 million have to support 1.45 billion people. So each one person has to support 4.4 people. Now, this 280 million also had work, then 600 million would support 1.45 billion, so everybody would support 2.2. So the family prosperity would go up. So the moment you give employment to everybody, the family poverty will come down. And this is a backlog of 280 million. But in addition, every year, about 24 million jobs have to be given to fresh people coming into the market.
Yeah.
So people will do their 10th class at the age of 15, people will do 12th class at the age of 17, people will do BA at the age of 20, and then 22 they'll do a postgraduate. So we counted these separately. That means in 2022, go back 15 years to 2007. So those born in 2007, coming to 10th class in 2022 and coming to the market. Then you go 2 years further back in 2005, they will in 2022 finish their 12th class, do the 12th class and come to the market. So like this we counted. When we found 27 million people are ready for the market. Okay. Now we removed 25% who are women because of marriage, childbearing, they will not be able to come. So still have 24 million people. Government is saying 5 million jobs are enough. Whereas we are saying 24 million jobs are needed for these people who are coming into the market after doing the studies, etc. Plus, there's a backlog of 280 million. So you need at least 60, 70 million work every year, and you're talking about 5 million. So you can't solve the problem of unemployment if you only cater to 5, 7 million. And now with AI coming, the situation is going to get extremely grim. Because now even IT companies, call centers, BPOs, they're shedding. Because call centers work, BPOs work can be done by AI. A lot of the mind work, like coding, that can be done by AI. So coders will get displaced. Similarly, doctors work, chartered accountants work, lawyers work. A part of it will be done, so you don't need apprentices. There is a relative of mine. He's devised an app. He takes a picture of your forehead, and then he puts up parameters like BDI and so on, and that will tell you your sugar, your BP, and so on. So you don't have to go to a doctor. So like this, in the coming years, even the skilled work is going to be displaced. Until now, when technical change took place, you displaced physical labor. So like harvester combine replaced the work of crop cutting. That was physical labor.
Yeah.
But now you're going to be displacing mental work. And therefore, there'll be massive unemployment, because where will these people go? What kind of new skills will they have to acquire to use AI in whatever work they're doing? So the problem is acute at the moment. We need 60, 70 million work every year, not 5 million as the government keeps saying. And then this will add to that pressure. So the situation is getting quite grim, for youth. Where will they get jobs? How will they be able to manage? And the parents are also upset. They spend money on the children's education and so on. And therefore, so this divide in the economy, the organized sector, those who've got good education, they'll be able to get something. But the unorganized sector, where the education level is also very poor, where will they go? A lot of labor is getting displaced everywhere. And our annual status of education report called ASER, that has been coming since 2005. That was showing that from rural schools in the 5th class, 50% children could not do second class reading, writing and maths.
Oh my God.
Okay. And then in last year, the report showed that if you take age group of 14 to 18, which means 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th class, 40% of them could not do second class reading and writing. So with the result, the education levels are very poor, because teaching is not very good. The emphasis on education is not there, on good education. And in our education system, we learn by rote. When you learn by rote and just do the exams, then you forget after the exam.
Yeah.
Whereas knowledge has to be built systematically from the base up. If your base is not good, then the next level will not be good, the next level will not be good. So therefore, your research requires high quality education. And today, globalization is all about technology. That's why India has become dependent on China for so many things. High-tech items and low-tech items, they're both coming from China. So you get Ganesh Murthy, and you get, your Diwali lights and Pichkari also from China. And you also get APIs from China and electronic components and, your automobile components and so on. And so you have $100 billion trade deficit with them. Even though at one level you call them your enemy country because they've entered your territory, but you could not do without them. Many of our factories cannot operate properly unless the Chinese engineers come.
Yeah.
And therefore, the factory operators were requesting the government to give visas, because the government is not giving visas to them. They said our factories are not running properly as a result, that's because these people are not there. And then we are dependent on the USA for our equipment, and we are dependent on Russia, because some of the critical equipment like BrahMos missile and the Sukhoi aircraft and the S-400 missiles are from Russia. So we are squeezed between these three.
Yeah.
Okay. So the situation, as you were asking, what is the situation? We have to understand that there is a huge diversity. Some segments are doing well, other segments are not doing well. Other segments cannot do very well because their education is very poor. And the Indian economy as a whole has become a prisoner because the technology development has been lagging. And therefore, Mr. Trump, the President Trump, he can squeeze us. He knows that we are dependent on them, right? China can squeeze us because they know that we don't have the technology. So this thing that we have not thought strategically of how to move the economy, how to become, strategically autonomous, to be able to develop our own technology. Look at the light combat aircraft. We have been developing it since 1988. And still, for critical things, we are dependent on Americans, the G404 engine. Last 2 years, they haven't supplied us the G404 engine. So we could not even produce one LCA. And the Air Chief Marshal is saying MiG-21s are going out and we are not able to replace them. So he's complaining that, without the LCA, we are under this thing. We should have 42 squadrons and we'll be down to about 30 squadrons. So G404 is 1980s technology, and even that we are not getting.
Yeah.
And G414, for which we were saying that we will do a technology development program with them, the Americans are not signing that agreement. So we are stuck because our LCA Mark II requires the G414. So we are not able to produce the critical aircrafts and so on. So we are heavily dependent, and that is because we have not thought strategically. And strategic thinking means you have to think about your technology so that you can be autonomous. You don't depend so heavily on other nations for technology. And then you can take steps to help your economy. At the moment, we have become prisoners. So as soon as Trump has put extra tariff, now we are worried our exports will be now short. And therefore, the demand in the economy will drop. And when the demand in the economy drops, then the rate of growth will slow down. And our exporters will be in trouble. And these are all, labor-intensive areas like textiles, like, your fisheries and so on, gems and jewelry, etc. So there's already unemployment increasing as a result of this. That is why the GST rate cut has been done. Because the idea is that if you cut GST rate on basic items, then those prices will drop. And when those prices drop, then the demand might increase. Either the demand for them will increase or the demand for other things will increase because now people will have saving. But I have argued that GST is applicable to the organized sector. So organized sector prices will come down. The unorganized sector is outside GST, so nothing will have change for them.
Hi guys, if you loved watching this clip and if you want to do a deep dive into the podcast, we've mentioned the link in the description. So click that link, watch that podcast and take notes. Thank you for watching and subscribe for more clips.